when I do a beach tumbler, I always like to get a photo so I can keep in my mind what I'm doing and what's going on. And if you can see the photo, you can see the water line is just pretty much straight line. You've got greens, you've got different blues, dark blues, light blues, your sky's a light blue. You can have heavy clouds or a few clouds. And I wanted to go with you and show you, this is a wine glass from Dollar Tree that I just used epoxy, and then I used dye with it just to come up with ink, just to come up with a very faint color so that you could see the color. It's very faint, but it makes a really nice set of different wine glasses for people that would like them for summer drinks in their home or at the beach or wherever you go. And this is one that I did. This is my tumbler, and I did it. We went to the beach and put my blue flip-flops on it. You around me much, you'll know that I really like blue. And then we have one here that it's made exactly like the beach tumbler, but I made a peekaboo out of it. I did the whole cup with the beach theme, and then I put a large decal on it for the shell, painted it white, took the decal for the actual shell off, put epoxy on, and then I put on a few water slides with Hawaiian flowers. It's got seashells, and you can see all that on it. And I did put, this is a quote on it for Mother's Day, and then when I pull the quote off, it shows the colors in it also as a peekaboo, so it shows the sand and goes on up into the water. But that's one that I made using this same technique, so you can come up with a lot of ideas for the same technique. Okay, and now we're gonna stir our epoxy. I mixed, I use Alumilite, and I mixed half A, half B. And for this particular tumbler, I did go ahead and I mixed 30 milliliters of A and 30 milliliters of B. And I did that because we are going to be pouring some up and making several different colors when we start our tumbler. So let me go back now and see if I can find you on the live. Okay, for some reason it's not coming up. I don't know why. We go back off and log on again, see if I can get it to come up. Okay, I think we're going now. Okay, I found us. Okay, and I mix my epoxy. I always stir a large batch for 4 minutes. I've never had a cup that came out and was sticky, and I've just made it always a set rule for myself that if I'm doing a large batch, I do it for 4 minutes. If I'm doing for a 30-ounce cup, I do it for 4 minutes. If I'm doing a 20-ounce cup, I stir for 3 minutes. And I like to get it mixed very well. And now if I were using Alumilite and I was going to have a white tumbler without dye in it, I always put just not even a drop of this Casting Craft translucent dye, just a tiny, tiny bit. It helps to keep any yellowing from coming through. Most any epoxy over time is going to yellow. And I know Alumilite does because I've had it happen to me. So be sure that you always, if you can, get your hands on some of that. I've been doing tumblers for 3 years, and I've used this the whole time and still got half a bottle. So it takes very little when you are just putting a tiny bit in there just to keep the yellow out. And we're going to mix using Alumilite dyes. I'll do a white, I'll do a beige. That will be for our sand. I've got 2 different colors of blue. I've got a deep blue and an ocean blue, and I'll also be doing some green. And then later we'll be doing a little touch of a darker tan color for some streaks in the sand, because you know when the water washes up on the sand, it does leave sometimes some dark streaks. So we want to make it look realistic if we can. And when I start pouring this up, I'll show you how much I put in each one. And I'll show you what we do as far as mixing. It takes very little of the Lumelite dye to actually make your colors. So you don't want to mix too much. You could do this and use paint. I've seen people do it using acrylic paint. But you have to be real careful with the paint and not use much, because it will get stringy and gooey. So be sure, and if you are using any paint, that you're careful about how much you put in there. And as far as any comments, if I don't answer your comments, be sure that I will go back after the live, either tonight or tomorrow, and any questions, I will answer your questions as best I can. And the Lumelite dye, it does have, when you stir it, a lot of bubbles in it, but I've never had a problem with the bubbles staying. They always pop with a heat gun or torch. Okay. And first I'm going to mix some white, but I'll go ahead and put a little bit in each of the containers. The white, it doesn't take a lot, because the only thing you're going to use the white for is your foam, and you'll use it for your clouds. And then you'll have a good bit that you'll be using for your sand, so I put about twice as much for the sand. And then the blue sky is a very pale blue. When you do the blue sky, you're going to need about as much as you do for the sand. And then I'll need one for green, and the two different colors of blue. That one's got something in it. And I'll want to keep just a little bit of the clear in case I run out of the color that I need, that I can go back in and mix a little more. So I'll always keep you just a little bit that you can go back if you need it. And then if you don't use it, you can always put it in a mold. And then you will need a separate stirring stick for all the different colors that you make. This is the Lumelite dye. This is the white. And the white, I'm not going to need but very little of just white. Now I'll use the white in mixing my other colors, some of them. But it takes about 2 drops of the white. As you can see, there's very little, get it where you can see it, very little in there. I'll stir it up, and like I said, make sure you have a separate stick for each color. And I don't want to keep repeating myself, but people they're hopping on separately, so I just want you to know, if I don't get your questions answered, I will go back and answer them. Now this is a blue dye. This will be the dark blue that we use. Takes very little, as you can see. I'm going to just put 1 drop in there, and I'll show you how the color is. See that 1 drop, how dark that blue is. I will go in, I don't want it quite that blue even with 1 drop, so I'll go in and I will mix a little bit of white with it just to tone it down just a little bit. And then for the sky, what I'll do for the sky, I'm going to put white. I'll put, as you can see, I'll put 1 drop, and this one's about empty. I'm going to let that stand on its end and run down while I do some of the other colors. Then we'll go back to it. Okay, this is the ocean blue, and it will have a little bit of a teal color to it. And again, let me show you, I'm only going to be using 1 tiny drop. And this dye is very concentrated. It will stain your hands. It'll stain your clothes. Well, as you can see, this one's got a little bit of an aqua color to it because it is called ocean blue. And then we'll do a little bit of green. The green, I'm going to just touch the stick to the green. As you can see, I'm doing very little. And that will show you how concentrated this is. See how green that is now, just using just that, barely touching the stir stick to it. And I'm going to touch the stick to the brown, but then we're going to have to mix a good bit of white with it to come up with a tan so that when we do the beach, it's not going to be too dark. And I'll show you again. I'm just barely touching that stick. You can just see it. And you can see what color of brown we got, but we are going to mix some white with that, so it'll be just a beige color for the sand. And then I'm going to put one drop in this, and then I'm going to put just a touch of blue in it out of our deep royal blue so that we can make our sky. But you can see I put just a little bit of white with that. This is the brown, and just a little bit mixing together. You can see how we've got a color for our sand. Takes very little. That's what I like about using the Alumilite dyes. They last forever because they're so concentrated. And then this is the white that I'm going to put just a touch of blue in for our sky. And it's going to take very little. And this stuff will stain your hands. As you can see, I've already got it all over mine. I usually put on gloves when I'm using this. Okay. Now this is our royal blue. And I'm going to use very little. I think I'll probably just use a toothpick. Put a toothpick here. And I'm just going to touch a little bit of that and put it in the blue till we get the sky the color that we want it. Need just a little bit more. All right, that's looking better. We want our sky just a very pale blue because we wanted a beautiful day at the beach. The beach is my happy place. I hope it's your happy place too. I usually try to go a couple of times a year. Okay, now we're getting a really pretty color for a beach color. For the sky at the beach. Okay, now we start and do the sky and the sand first, and I will put on my gloves before I start doing that. You'll want to have your heat gun handy and a torch handy. And if you will, some of you go on and as you're leaving questions, go on and let me know how long you've been doing tumblers. And I know some of you we talked about last week where you were from, and I found out one of you were from Georgia, and that's where I'm from. And I know you can't tell by my accent where I'm from. Okay. Now my cup is turning very slowly. This turtle turns really, really slow. There we go. Now I can. Okay. And let's just pour it on the bottom. And you'll just want it to go up just a little ways. You don't want to take it up very far. You can see probably about 3/4 of the way. And I did mix more epoxy than I would normally mix doing this, because when you're mixing colors, I'd rather have more than not enough. So I always try to mix a little bit more. And the only thing about this, you do have to change your gloves 2 or 3 times, because you don't want your colors to mix as you're using them. And this, I'm going to just put a little bit on and let it coat really well. And as it turns, it'll level out and even out. And I think the next time, from the boats we had, we'll be doing a glitter beach tumbler. And then the next time, we're going to do the one that is a wood grain that looks like planks. And it's a Father's Day tumbler that I did that everybody likes, so we're going to look at doing that. So we'll have fun doing that one, and we'll schedule it for a few days up later too. Now I'm going to leave a little bit in this because, like I said, when we go back with the sand, we do want to put some dark streaks in it. So at that point, what I have left, I will mix a little bit more of the brown dye with it. Keep you some baby wipes handy, because you will need them. That one I touched it a little bit, so I'm going to wait for it to come around and put just a little bit more on it. Then the next color that we'll be using, we'll use the blue for the sky. And remember, we want the sky, we'll want a contrast, so we're going to do the sky in a baby blue. There we go. And I'm going to put on another glove. And gloves are scarce this day and time, right? And a little trick that I do when I'm painting, I keep a glove handy, and I always put a glove on my left hand. I've got one of my husband's old shirts that's long sleeve. I always put that long sleeve shirt on, and I always have on my apron, because when you paint, it's going to get all over you. That way you don't have to worry about it getting on your hands and ruining your clothes. I've ruined enough clothes that I've learned to wear an apron. So it's worth your time and money to save on clothes to wear an apron. Okay, now we're doing the sky. And like I said, we want it very pale blue. And then after the epoxy dries on this, then I go back and put a few seagulls on. And that point is when you'll want to put a name or whatever you want on it. A quote, if you want that on it. I put a few seashells. I put my blue flip-flops on it. I love blue. That's been my color ever since I can remember. I've always loved the color blue. And as you can see, the sky is just very, very pale. Make sure you get it to the top. And as you can see, I always tape off the top and the bottom of my tumblers. I think it just makes a cleaner look. Very few do I ever leave it on. Sometimes I will if the customer requests it, but over the years I've learned that if a customer drops their tumbler, most likely it's going to land either on the bottom or on the rim at the top, and that's where it will crack and break. So it makes it a little bit better for them as far as maybe ruining their tumbler. And I explained that to them and explained that's the reason that I like to use just the top taped off and the bottom taped off. And I think it just gives a real clean, elegant look. Okay, now we've got the top and the bottom, and now we're going to go with the actual, let me put a little bit more in this. We're going to go with the actual water, where, remember I told you when you're looking at the water, how your water line looks straight? That's what we're going to be working on next. And I'm going to mix just a little bit of white in with it so it won't be quite as dark. It'll come out. Still just a little bit dark. And this illuminate dye has tiny holes in it, but you'll want to leave them that way because you certainly don't want too much gushing out when you put it in there. Okay, now to do this, I just stream it around and try to keep that water line sort of straight. And I have a silicone mat under my cup, and that way anything that drops will come right off of it once it dries. You can see it's dropping off the bottom. Okay, now we're going to go in and we're going to use our ocean blue. Just stream the ocean blue in there. And we don't have any color on this because we did a white base. So now when I do my glitter beach tumbler, you'll see that I do go in and I spray paint my base different colors, because the glitter, you don't want white showing through. So I always go through and paint that, but we'll show you that when we get to that point. Now here I'm going to leave a white space for our foam. And we'll put some clouds in the sky, and we'll put some waves in. Go back in with our ocean blue, and we're going to put a little bit just sporadically in with our royal blue, because the water's not exactly the same color when you look out over it. Sometimes you see blue, sometimes you see green, you see all different colors, and that's what we're looking for. We want those different colors. Now we're going to go back in with a little of the royal blue here. And one thing about making cups, you've got to enjoy doing it. And I've learned you've got to have patience. That's one thing that, but don't pray for patience. Don't do that. Don't ever want to pray for patience. Okay, now we've got that blending and turning. I'll put a little bit more of the aqua in here. And now for the white, I want to do a few clouds first. You don't want to put many. We don't want it to be a real cloudy day. So we want just a few. And just touch it in a few places. Okay. And now with this white, I'm going to put just a little bit of glycerin in it. And we're hoping that that's going to give us some sails when we start doing our waves. I'm going to put maybe 4 drops. And that's all. Stir it up really good. Okay, we're going to put this around our beach line. And we're also going to put some where the waves cap out into the water. Just a few scattered here and there. Okay. Now with your heat gun, you don't want to get it real hot, but you do want it to move just a little bit. And when you heat it up, when I do the clouds, I want to blow the heat gun in them and spread them out so that it thins them out and they look more like fluffy clouds. And then a few you can leave a little bit thicker. And then we're going to blow a little bit of waves down into the beach. Thin them out just a little bit. And we're going to do a little bit of darker brown, like we talked about. Doesn't take much. I'm going to use a toothpick, and I'm going to put just very little. And if we need to add some more, we will. But you can see just that little bit, those dark lines that it's putting in that beach color for the sand. And then we're just going to stream some with a toothpick. Not going to do much. Just a little along. of that. And now I'm going to get the torch. And hopefully this will give us some sails. There's a few forming. The sails make the foam look foamy. This is the first time I've used the glycerin for that. And then you'll have to let it turn some, and as it turns, then you can go back and add more color. As I said before, I wanted to leave a little bit of our clear so that if I needed to mix some more, and I'm going to mix a little bit more for the dark blue. And I may not even have to put any dye in it because it's still, even pouring that in there, it's still pretty dark. And if you look at the clouds, you can see they're really, you can just barely see them blending in. Makes them look real. And right in here, I'm going to put just a little bit more of the ocean blue. That's the color this is called. Now we'll let it turn just a little bit before I add the blue around the line to get it a little bit straighter. As you blow it, then it actually, I'll wait about putting the white on there too, because when you hit it with a heat gun, then that makes it real liquid and it makes it flow around the cup like a flow, and you all know what a glitter flow is. So we don't want it to flow a lot. And like I said, you can do this and you can use paint. The paint will be stringy, so you have to be careful with the paint about how much you put in there, because you can get too much paint in there. Okay, now we're going to go back and find some waves again. And in this cup, I will post a picture of it then later, so that you can see how it turned out. And I'm not answering any questions right now because I'm trying to keep my mind on what I'm doing, but I will go back and answer any of your questions. I see one that says we're in Georgia. I'm in North Georgia, in Bremen. Bremen is right at the Georgia-Alabama line on, well, Tallapoosa is really the right at the line, but we're about 11 miles from the line, somewhere around there, on I-20. We're just off I-20. few sails showing up now in the white. Let me get that on there. I know I can be at the ocean and sit for hours and hours and just listen and feel the breeze and love it, love it. Of course, I love the mountains too. I just like to go. My husband says my middle name is Go, and that's pretty much so. He's a homebody and I like to go. Okay, now let's go back and get a little bit more of our dark brown. Put just a few more spots in there. And we are getting a few sails showing up now in the white. It's starting to pop. And that right there is repelling for some reason. Just a little bit. Now I'm going to go back and use the torch. And that's about all there is to this one. If you look right in here, you can see where some sails are forming. And when I go back and post a picture of it online, I will make some close-ups so you can see how some of the sails are forming in that white. And that's because we put that glycerin in it. Okay. And I'm going to wait just a few minutes, and I'm going to show you when I pull my tape. I only wait about 5 minutes to pull the tape. So while we're looking at that, I'm going to go in and look at some of the I'll go in and look at some of the questions and see if I can answer them. I see a lot of hellos, and hello to everybody. And what was the name of the liquid blue I showed? It is Casting Craft Translucent. And it takes just a tiny bit, and a lot of people only use it if they're doing a white cup, but I think if it's going to turn yellow on white, it's going to turn yellow on any other color. So I use it every time that I am doing a tumbler, unless I'm putting dyes in it. And if I'm putting dyes in it, then I don't use it until I do my final coat of epoxy. And I will put it on there when I do my final coat of epoxy. Yes, we will be saving it when it's over, so you can go back and view it. The colors that I'm using are dyes. They're Lumelite dyes, and they're very concentrated. Oklahoma, great. You'll love doing tumblers. I order my dyes directly from a Lumelite, but Hobby Lobby does have them in their craft department for model cars and model airplanes. You can find some of the colors there. And that's where I got mine when I started, but now I order directly from a Lumelite. No, I'm not using acrylic paint, but you can, and I have seen people use acrylic paint, but you have to be real careful because it will get stringy. Very easy. It doesn't take an awful lot. It's like the dye. Okay. Yeah, watching tutorials is how you learn to do them. That's how I learned. I guess I probably watched tutorials for probably 6 months before I ever started trying to do one. And I kept a notebook handy and write down all the different things that you think you will need to buy. the techniques that you'll be using. And it's a good idea each time you make a tumbler to get you a post-it card and write the name of the tumbler and what you used on it and the colors that you used on it. Because if you show it on your page and then somebody wants to order one, sometimes you remember and sometimes you don't, all the colors that you use on it. So it's a good idea to do that for every cup that you do too. Okay, used to live in Georgia. I enjoy watching other people and learn a lot from them. Now this particular technique, I watched a lady named Heather Autry do it, and learned this technique from her. It's not something that I thought up myself. This tumbler came from Walmart. It's one of the tumblers from there. And right now you can see a lot of sales for them, and they look really, really pretty. And I'm still not happy how this is not staying straight here. And I know it's because I put heat on it. So what I'm going to do is go back and put a little bit more on there, and I'm going to string it and try to get it a little bit straighter. You have to let it start stringing in order to get it straight. But this has probably been one of my best sellers, is the Beach Tumbler. Probably equally as much with the glitter as with just the plain. I like the plain myself because to me it looks more like the beach. And that's why I like it, because it looks like I'm looking at the ocean. And I will go in, like I said, and I know as people watch the replays, then they actually go in and ask questions for that too. So I will go back in and answer any questions for that. And then while you're looking at your tumbler, you can also go back in and add any colors if you want to add a little bit. After adding that blue, then I need to add a few more colors to it. And I'll put a little more white. Just dot it just a little bit for the caps. And it will continue to spread as it turns. And at this point, I would pull my tape. And I don't leave my tape on very long. I found that I get a much cleaner line if I go ahead and pull it after about 5 minutes. And to tape mine off at the top and bottom, I always use electrical tape because that tape stretches, and I really get very little bleeding when I'm using electrical tape for the top and the bottom. And if you have bleeding, you can go ahead and straighten it out before you put on your final coat of epoxy. And a lot of times when you do, there's always a little bit of line where the epoxy comes up, and I just take my thumbnail and clean that off. That's the tape off of that. Now we'll take the tape off the bottom. Here's where it's taped. And that cleans it right off. And there's a little bit of blue I don't like, so I'm going to cover it up. And like I said, any mistakes that you see, you can go back and you can correct a lot of those when you do your second coat of epoxy. You can go back in. I've seen a lot of times where the beach goes completely away, the way the cup turns, and if it does, then you can go in and add some more beach when you do your second coat of epoxy. But that's pretty much all that you've got to do on this one. And you can do it in pretty much any size. As you can see, I did it in a small tumbler, and I did it in a 30-ounce tumbler, and this one is a 20-ounce. And this is a 20-ounce Ozark from Walmart. And I do have some Hogs tumblers. I like Hogs. I love the modern curve to work with. So that's all we're going to do on that, and then I will post this then again tomorrow after it turns tonight, and let you see what it looks like tomorrow, and I will go back in and answer any questions.